Start now. So, hi everyone, welcome here and thanks for being here. So, I'm Neha, a volunteer with Work on Climate. So, before we dive in, I want to take just a couple of minutes for housekeeping to set the stage. I hope the tech team, everything is set up. Yes, I have Felix with me, our technical support, who will be there throughout. The chat is open and we encourage you to use it throughout so you can share reactions, questions, things that are landing for you. We will be recording the today's session. So if you have any concerns right now, you can definitely turn off your cameras. But I can assure every one of you look amazing, beautiful. But still, if you want, you can turn off your camera because we are going to start the recording now. Okay. So basically how I am going to can I just ask everyone to how we are going to start? So we'll start shortly, but before I just walk you through the whole thing, how we are going to start, this is something that I have to say. So have something to write with. So like, what are three words you associate with the economy? As I have been repeating like again and again in the beginning of the session, but definitely this is very important. And now basically how we are going to move ahead. So the next 90 minutes we'll hear Jennifer's presentation. And at two different points, we have short 10 minutes breakout groups. So one with a structured question, and that's more, and another one which is like more open-ended. So there will be some time at the end to ask a few questions as well. And we'll close with a quick survey. So why are we here? So, at Work on Climate, we've been on a journey of exploration and education about the regenerative economy. We've been asking ourselves, like, what might climate work look like, right? If our economy was completely different, beyond markets, beyond paid work, to include homes, communities, and public infrastructure. It's a big question, though, but this is the reason we all are here today. We are here to learn and explore. The goal is to leave with a bigger understanding of our economy. So here we have Jennifer Bradsburg, and she has been a secondary school teacher for almost 30 years, mainly focused on economics in the International Bachelorate Program, but with additional experience in business and environmental system education as well. Wow. So she now works on a project to change the way economics is taught in schools around the world, to empower young people to create regenerative societies. Interesting, right? So I'm so excited over here, and I'm sure you are, every one of you. That's why you all are here. So now I'm excited to pass the mic to her. Jennifer, the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Neha, for the introduction. Um, Before I dive in with the main content of the presentation, I'd like to take a moment to give a little bit of background on the origin and the why behind the regenerative economics project that I'm engaged with right now. The origin of this project actually came from students, which is something that always gets me really excited when I talk about it. Back in 2022, two student organizations, Students Organizing for Sustainability and Teach the Future in the UK, came up with this great idea for a project where they asked academics and teachers to completely rewrite the English national curriculum to include sustainability at every single year level and every single course. And their thinking at the time was that they anticipated that a new Labour government would come into power, that that government would open up the curriculum for review, and they wanted to be ready with a new set of curriculum documents that would help the country embed sustainability across the curriculum. So these two student organizations asked me to work on both economics and business. And unlike many other subjects, it was very clear to me that you can't just sprinkle in a little bit of sustainability into economics and have it be fit for purpose, that instead the course needed to be rewritten from the ground up. So I contacted Kate Rayworth, who's the author of Down Economics and professor at Oxford, whether she would help, and she agreed, and she brought in some more academics, and I brought in some more teachers, and together we completely rewrote, first of all, the GCSE economics syllabus, and then later we rewrote also the business. And also we worked on the A levels. So this work was published in May 2023, and in the same month, I quit my job as a teacher so that I could work full-time on trying to bring these ideas to life, to try to get them into schools, to see if we could get curriculum reform in economics everywhere, not just in England, but all over the world, because as you may be aware, we have a kind of monoculture of economics education around the world. So we wanted to try to change that. This project is essentially a response to the meta crisis, or polycrisis, whichever your term that you'd like to use for this, these kind of intersecting crises that we see around us, from overshooting planetary boundaries and the resulting natural catastrophes happening, to mass migrations and the spread of pandemics, the development of AI without guardrails, epidemics of loneliness and mental health issues, as well as the rise of leaders with authoritarian intentions. And our contention is that, or our claim is that all of these problems are interlinked by the design of our economies. And when we look at where our current economics courses sit, both in secondary schools and beyond, these courses are really stabilizers in this period of transition as we're trying to go from this dominant degenerative system that is undermining social and ecological well-being. So we're trying to move to a new emergent system where we can meet the needs of all within planetary boundaries. These courses are actually holding these old dominant systems in place. And what we're really aiming for with the Regenerative Economics Project and economics education generally is the hospicing or decomposition of these old ideas, old approaches, and instead the nurturing of new economic ideas, new approaches that can help move us towards a more regenerative system. The work that we do in regenerative economics has three key parts. So one of them has to do with learning materials, and that was kind of like has grown out of the original work that we did, curriculum work with SOS UK and Teach the Future. We not only have a syllabus and a detailed specification, but we've also written a book with 2 years worth of teaching materials on regenerative economics. It's aimed for students from age 14 to 19, although it's finding a lot of traction also in universities, even master's programs at the moment, because everybody has so much learning to do around this topic. We've also been doing a lot of grassroots work with teachers and students. So all over the world, we're helping teachers and students in their schools find footholds for this work, even if they have to teach a mandated course from their national or international curriculum authorities. And the big prize and the thing that we're really working towards, though, is change at the national or international level from curriculum authorities. We'd like them to change the mandated curricula so that teachers and students don't have to work so hard to try to squeeze in these new ideas. And these three pieces of work are interlinked. The book is helping teachers and students find the footholds. It's also presenting like an entirely new way of organizing economics education, and that makes it easier for these curriculum authorities to move away from old paradigms. We have this really interesting situation right now when we're thinking about systems change and how that comes about. We have multiple countries plus the International Baccalaureate that are either working on reforming their entire national curricula or they are working on specifically economics. And our theory of change is that if we can get a few of these countries plus the International Baccalaureate to shift in this direction, that it will set off global social tipping points in secondary schools and beyond around the world. And so that's what we're working hard towards right now. And 2026 is a really pivotal year because this is the year that many of these countries will actually publish and develop and finish developing their new curricula. So we're working really hard to try to influence that change. So now I'm going to dive into the main part of the presentation where we're going to be looking at how the economy is framed by most economists and be contrasting that with how the economy is actually framed by reality. So before we dive into how the economy is framed by economists and reality, we need to get clear on a little piece of systems thinking. And that's where we draw a systems boundary to define what it is we're studying. Drawing a system boundary is incredibly important because it defines what's in scope, what we're examining, versus what's out of scope, what we leave out of our study or what we marginalize. And these system boundaries, they're intellectual, they're imaginary, but they can be defined either implicitly or explicitly. It's always better if you define them explicitly because everybody in the room then knows what those boundaries are and can also challenge those boundaries. But what we have in our economics courses is more of an implicit system boundary, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. England is actually one of the exceptions in their curriculum because it states very specifically that economics as a study is focused on market-based systems. But this is the system boundary that we see across the world. Even though England is defining it explicitly across the world, we see this system boundary defined implicitly everywhere. So we draw an imaginary boundary around markets, around price-based exchange, and we call that the economy. Yeah, this is what we end up studying when we study economics. And this has a number of really unfortunate consequences because all non-market activity is either marginalized or it's completely ignored in these courses. So I'm just going to run through some of the things that are either marginalized or ignored. The state appears in these courses, has a big role in these courses actually, but the language that we use to talk about the state makes it very clear that in these courses, the state is a marginal actor. We use a lot of really loaded language to talk about the state. We talk about the state intervening in the economy as though the state is somehow not part of the economy, but is somehow outside and stepping in. We talk about the state imposing regulations or that taxes are a burden. So we've got this loaded language that shows not only is it marginal, but it's got a lot of sort of negative connotation around it. We also marginalize society and our systems, and we even have a term in economics to talk about social and ecological impacts of the economy defined by markets. We call them externalities. And that's because we have taken markets as the starting point, and we are looking downstream at impacts that are outside the market system. We call them externalities. And in fact, what's really interesting about the way these courses are shaped, how they're set up and structured, is that we don't even have a language to talk about social and ecological impacts or consequences except through the lens of markets as market failures, as though the market is the default way of organizing everything, and we have to look through markets as a kind of lens in order to be able to see and discuss anything outside of markets. What's wrong with this, as well as defining these as externalities, is that we're only really looking downstream. We don't spend any time talking about the upstream dependencies of all market-based activity on healthy social and ecological systems. Now, looking beyond what's marginalized in these courses, we can also see some things that are completely ignored, some really important parts of the economy. And one of those is household care and domestic work. All the what's called social reproduction that happens inside households, without which no economic activity could possibly take place, right? So the household is the place where people regenerate themselves. We've got this social reproduction. But in our courses, we completely ignore this part of the economy. We don't pay any attention to it. And if households are addressed at all, they're mainly addressed as consumers of things from markets. And in fact, the Luxembourg curriculum actually explicitly says the main function of households is to consume things from markets, which I find a completely absurd statement. I don't know how it made it into curriculum documents, but anybody who's actually lived in a household knows that the main purpose of the household is certainly not just to consume things from markets. But beyond that, we also have another really important provisioning institution in the commons. These are all the self-organized management of shared resources with co-created rules that happens all over the world. It was the default way of organizing for millennia for people. But we don't give any attention to the commons, or if it's mentioned, we usually have the word tragedy in front of it, as though it's impossible for human beings to manage shared resources together. And then finally, we've got this whole issue of values and ethics that are sitting invisible as well in our courses. In fact, students at the very beginning of their courses are told that there's a difference between positive economics and normative economics. And positive economics is all fact-based, and normative economics has to do with opinions and values. But real economics is focused on the positive, the fact-based, and isn't concerned as much with normative issues. But when we look actually at how markets are treated in these courses, so we look inside that system boundary, we can see it's just loaded with incredibly damaging values in terms of the assumptions that are made for the models that are used in these courses. So one of them is that human beings are selfish, utility maximizing individuals with unlimited needs and wants. Students are never, ever asked to unpack this claim that human needs and wants are unlimited, but it's not true. Human needs are limited. We know what they are. We can quantify them. And wants are actually socially shaped. And this warrants discussion, but students are never asked to have a discussion around this claim. Another value that's sitting in there is price. Price is the metric of value. When students' analyses are all forced through supply and demand diagrams in the entire course, and they are asked to do this constantly, then we see price as the main or only metric of value in these courses. Profit maximization is another value that's sitting at the heart of these economic models. As a teacher in the International Baccalaureate program, I probably had students identifying the profit maximizing point in their theory of the firm diagrams 100 times before their exam. It's absolutely hammered into students, this profit maximization idea, which is incredibly damaging because when we talk about profit maximization, what we're really talking about here is firms using whatever power they have to extract as much value as they possibly can from every other stakeholder in society. And we're going to take up the issue of profit a little bit later in this presentation. A couple of other things that we see in these models and in the way markets are treated is the idea of endless and aimless growth. Even if these courses have a little segment where they question endless growth of GDP, all of the models assume and expect students to talk about growth being positive. And we start these courses with the idea of scarcity, that there's not enough. Again, related to this idea of unlimited needs and wants that students are not invited to unpack. And that sets up from the very beginning this kind of sort of anxious perspective, the competition, the justifying sort of grabbing what you can and hoarding what you can because there's not enough for everybody. And therefore, we need to look at other human beings as competitors rather than fellow human beings that we collaborate with to ensure that everybody does, in fact, have what they need. When you put all this together and you see how we view the economy in these courses, what you get is a narrative that is not aligned with most people's values, and yet it is firmly embedded in all of our heads. Not just if you've taken an economics course, but just in the public discourse, in the way politicians talk, what you hear in the media. It's out there as a kind of dominant paradigm in the way that we think about the economy. And this really matters because powerful people have economics degrees, people in business, in politics, in media, or if they don't have economics degrees, their main advisors do, or their most important advisors often have economics degrees. And the economic worldviews that we're teaching and perpetuating shape the decisions that these powerful people make, how they act, the stories they tell. And this impacts all of us, even if we never, ever take an economics course. So just show you this really quickly. So we asked you at the very beginning of this session, if you came on early enough, to give us 3 words for what you think about when you think about the economy. And we asked this also of students at the International School of The Hague. These are 14-year-old students. They're actually engaged right now in the world's first regenerative economics course for secondary school students. So it's a pilot program there. And on day 1, we asked them that same question. What are 3 words you associate with the economy? And you can see what their responses were, that money, that business, that markets, GDP, growth, finance, these things are really dominating their perspectives, even though they have never taken an economics course before. So this shows you just really how deeply this framing of the economy is embedded in kind of the discourse and the paradigm that impacts all of our thinking. So this brings me then to the next piece where I want to contrast this paradigm or this way of viewing the economy with reality. And what I'm showing you here now is a different way of framing the economy. What we've done here, or what this diagram shows, is widening the system boundary, or seeing the big picture, as Kate Raworth talks about in Donut Economics. This is called the embedded economy model. And you can see that markets are still here. They're obviously a really, really important and very powerful way of organizing to meet human needs. And they're still in the frame. But what we've done is we've zoomed out. And by zooming out, we reveal more parts of the system and more relationships of the system, which also enables us to see and talk about more perspectives on the system, right? So being able to zoom out is also a kind of a key element of systems thinking, how you zoom in and zoom out. And we're recommending then to curriculum authorities around the world that we zoom out and stop pretending that markets are the economy, and show kids, young people, more parts of the system and more relationships. Now I'm just going to pick apart that diagram a little bit so that you can understand the significance of this. So first of all, in terms of talking about what's in the economy, what is the economy? Again, you've got markets here still, but you have other ways of organizing that are given equal attention and kind of airtime. And one of them is the household sitting there at the top. This is the producing households produce core goods and services to meet everyday needs and sustain life. And they're driven by values of care and sharing and reciprocity. Of course, we still have markets in this frame. Markets are places where private goods and services are produced and exchanged through markets. They're sold using the price mechanism, and competition and profit are part of the values that are underpinning this way of organizing. Then you've got the commons. These are co-created goods and services produced and governed by communities, where they manage together shared resources, and they are some of the values underpinning them have to do with collective stewardship of those shared resources that the group depends on. And then you've got the state, and the state in this frame is much more than just an institution that cleans up the mess of markets or maybe drafts some rules around contracts and private property. Instead, it itself is also a provisioning institution with a responsibility to provide public goods and services produced for the whole population, while also creating the rules and regulations that shape all economic activity. Yeah, in other words, that sort of frame and shape the way households, markets, commons behave in and of themselves, but also their relationships with one another. And the values that should be underpinning this institution are public purpose and collective decision-making. All of these provisioning institutions have their own roles, but they also overlap with one another. We have redundancy built into the system when it's functioning well. It's a key component of resilience, actually, is the redundancy. There are ways that they complement one another, that households complement markets, but also, for example, there are inherent tensions between them. In particular, I'd just like to call attention to the addition of the household and commons to this framing of what the economy is. What's really important to understand is that these two institutions are places where care and collective stewardship are really richly embedded into the way we organize. And they are essential to human well-being and to social cohesion, to our practice of being able to collaborate with one another, to get things done, to share resources, etc. They're absolutely essential. But they're also really precarious and threatened. And anybody, I think many of us have this feeling right now, feeling that our households are threatened. We know that commons have been threatened throughout history by the kind of collusion between market and state to enclose shared resources and to privatize them for profit. So it's really important not only that we make these institutions visible when we're talking about the economy and teaching about the economy, but also that we're really clear about the need to strengthen these institutions. That one of the purposes of the economy is really to find ways of making households and commons function better, to support them better, and also to constrain often the power of markets and state, which can often encroach upon these institutions, especially when they act together. The economy, then, we can see is embedded in society. And it's really important to know that the economy just doesn't stand alone, that it's important that we talk about values very clearly. We don't pretend that they don't exist. Power, narratives, history, culture and social norms, politics and law are all a part. They all shape the economy, the way that we organize ourselves, but also the way we organize ourselves has an impact on these social factors as well. And then the economy and society is embedded in Earth systems. So every single thing that we do in the economy is dependent on material, on energy, on Earth systems processes, and everything and every breath that we take even. I mean, I have to laugh sometimes when you see these reports will come out occasionally where it says, shock. 50% of GDP is dependent on nature. And you just want to shake people and say, come on, do you not realize that every element of what we do, everything we do in society, in the economy, is dependent on healthy ecosystems, not 50% and not 70%, but all of it. And everything we do also has an impact on those systems. And so we have to be extremely careful about how we design our economies, because if we're negatively impacting these systems too greatly, then we will undermine the very foundations that make life possible, including all economic life. So again, putting all this together in the embedded economy, what you get when you start thinking about the economy this way is that it enables much more complex systems thinking, because we've revealed more parts, more relationships, and more perspectives in the economy. We get courses, when we teach about this and we use this framing, we get courses that are inherently more interdisciplinary, because we've allowed insights from anthropology and sociology and ecology and politics and other disciplines to be infused in our discussions about the economy. It also helps to end human nature dualism, because, if we're approaching the course correctly, we're going to be constantly talking about our dependence on energy, matter, and earth system processes. And it's also a very natural way to open the door to talking about multiple economic schools of thought, because this wide lens allows us to see insights from ecological economics, from feminist economics, from institutional economics, from Marxist economics, from complexity economics, right? But in a very natural way allows those ideas to become infused in the conversation. So taking this wide boundary view, what I'd like you to do now, we asked you at the very beginning to give us three words you associate with the economy. But after presenting you with that wider frame, I'm wondering what three words you would now associate with the economy. And it would be great if you could just take a minute. We'll take about a minute or so to have you take some time to put some words into the chat. And Neha, I can't see the chat, so it'd be great if you could read aloud maybe some of the things that you're seeing people putting in the chat.
Yeah, sure. Happy to help. So Dominic writes, household and commons are the people in the market. Okay, that's different. Okay. So Shireen writes, people, resource, market. Erica, waste, energy, commons. And Paul, system, interaction, standards. Verena writes, it's disappearing. Earth, households, narratives. Christine, circular, interdependent, respectful. Trixie Ann writes ecosystem, humans, nature. Mary writes overall health, community exchanges. Do you want me to read more? There are, okay. I'm so happy to see
But
people
just take
actually.
a few more.
Yeah.
We're good on time. I'm curious.
Okay. Okay. Sergio writes interdependent, resourceful, abundant. Amy writes system, interconnected, cycle. Then Amir writes maximum value economy. Hardik writes energy, material only of need, stop greedy. Emmy writes resource and waste. Luana writes system, resources, well-being. So
Okay,
Jennifer,
great.
you can
Yeah,
stop me anytime. I'm
yeah,
so
that's
happy
good.
to see that
Thank you.
people are,
Great.
yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. Perfect. So when we define in the regenerative economics work, there are many definitions of the economy, and I guess one of the points that I want to make is that what the economy is contested. It's not something that everyone is going to have the same definition about. What's really interesting is that in our economics courses, students aren't usually given the chance to talk about what the economy is. In the regenerative economics work, we often define it this way, that it's all the human-made systems we use to transfer and transform energy and matter to meet the needs of all within planetary boundaries. And you can see that there's a very clear purpose embedded as a part of the definition, which is also something you don't typically find in these courses. So what I'd like to do now in this next segment, and we're starting to move towards the first really short breakout room, which I hope you're going to find fun, actually. We're going to look at a few examples of narrow and wide boundary thinking in action. And the first one we're going to look at together is education. This is something dear to my heart. I had mentioned to you, actually, let me just go back quickly. I had mentioned early in the presentation that New Zealand is one of the countries that is reviewing its national curriculum right now. It's actually reviewing the entire national curriculum. And as a part of that national curriculum in year 1 to year 10, so very young students up to the kind of year level just before the final 3 years of schooling, they've already published a draft of the new curriculum. In that curriculum is the social sciences subject, which covers history, geography, civics, and economics. And what they're doing with this new curriculum is they're trying to move to a knowledge-rich curriculum. They had a very kind of vague framing of the curriculum before, and now they're moving to really explicitly outlining what students should know and be able to do. And they've already published the year 1 to 10 curriculum. This is now on the Ministry of Education's website. I was not part of the discussions around this. But this curriculum is now out for consultation until I think April 24th. And that means the public can comment on what they've done, and we'll certainly be doing that, as you can imagine. But I just wanted to show you an example of what they've outlined for year 1. So these are students around the age of 6. Because it's a great example of really narrow boundary thinking. And what we're going to do together in the breakout room is have a think about what wide boundary thinking might look like. So here is the current New Zealand draft for year 1, again, around the age of 6. Now, what you're going to see here is just there's not very much here, and there could be much more because if they're giving equal airtime to history, geography, civics, and economics, you could have maybe something like 30 hours of instruction in economics over the course of the year. But I don't want to focus necessarily on the amount here, but I'd like to focus on the content. So if you look here, they say one of the kind of things that they want students to know is that New Zealand coins and notes have different monetary values. And Sir Edmund Hillary is on the $5 note. He's a celebrated mountaineer and was the first person to climb Mount Everest. So this is their curriculum for economics for 6-year-olds year 1. So what I'm going to ask you to do in the breakout room, and I hope you'll find this fun, kind of dragging you into my world a little bit, just for 10 minutes, so not very long, I'd like you to take a wide boundary view, and I'd like you with the other participants to come up with a few ideas about what you would want the youngest students in school to learn about the economy. Now, Felix is going to put you into the breakout rooms. And when you go there, though, I would like you not to talk right at the very beginning because many people like to have just a little bit of time to think first. So for about the first 2 minutes, you can stay quiet and do some thinking. You might have some paper next to you to write down some ideas. The next 2 minutes, do a quick round of introductions because it's always nice to do a little bit of networking with some other people who are interested in the same topics and agree on a reporter who's going to put something into the chat. Then spend about 5 minutes discussing the question, what would you want the very youngest students in school to learn about the economy? And then 1 minute to just decide between you, just one idea for the reporter to put into the chat upon return. So we're going to split you into the groups. There will be instructions, and the link to this embedded economy model are going to be in the chat so that you can open this up and have a look at it when you're in the breakout rooms. So I will see you in about 10 minutes.
Okay, breakout rooms are open. Thank you all very much. And
Anybody interested to speak anything?
We don't need to speak, just put it in the chat. Just put your idea in the chat, just so that we can sheep.
Definitely. We'll have another breakout room, so if you still have emotions left, you can drop in there.
We're just going to take just a couple minutes to get ideas in the chat. I'm taking notes too. Mm-hmm. Nice. Yep. Care and stewardship in the curriculum. Yep. Maori ideas. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Yeah, it's great that you recognize the how closely tied some of these ideas are to Maori ideas that are already in the culture, but are not currently being kind of captured in the curriculum itself. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Community, thinking about the economy for the concept of community. Yeah. Connection to place, connection to nature. They need something concrete. The learning about notes and coins is rapidly becoming less relevant. Yeah, making choices about resources. Yeah, stewardship in the commons. Yeah, nice. Great ideas. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, these are all really lovely ideas, and I see that you get the point. I mean, I can't. I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who finds it a little bit shocking that this is sitting in the year one curriculum like this. And if you're in New Zealand or around there and have some capacity to feed into the public consultation on this, it would be great to hear more voices about this. These are great. Felix, I'm assuming that I can capture this, that we'll be able to see this chat later. Is that correct? We can capture all of it?
yes, that's right. I've
Okay.
got all the things, and actually, that might be a cool thing to send out in the email, that the recap email. So fingers crossed that I remember to do that. I'm gonna try.
Great. Okay. So what I wanted to just show you, thanks so much for doing that. I hope that that was a kind of an interesting discussion or as a way of thinking about the implications of this wide boundary lens when we're talking about education. I just wanted to show you quickly, we have not submitted this yet and I'm still working on it, but oh, wait, here we go. These were some of the things that we've started putting together. We thought it was really, really important that students throughout their time studying economics are at increasing sophistication, talking about the purpose of the economy, thinking about what it means to live well, how does that feel, what it means to contribute to communities and care for other people and nature, ecological and social embeddedness. So young people understanding that we live and meet needs together, not alone. So really getting away from this individualistic orientation that we see in most economics courses. and that helping, sharing, and taking responsibility is important, that humans are a part of the natural world, just like plants and other animals, that we need food and water and shelter and care to live, and making things involves using materials from nature. This was very much in line, by the way, with the design curriculum, which is all about, in the very beginning, youngest ages, about using materials. Local natural features like soil, rivers, weather, plants support life where we live. Again, close connections with geography. And you can see also the connection to citizenship education, right? So taking this approach allows for this kind of interdisciplinarity and connection with the other parts of the curriculum. Then thinking about the provisioning institutions, that families and close groups organize everyday care, food, and shelter, that people use simple routines and roles to help manage everyday life. And then financial literacy is something that was very important to the Ministry of Education. But they've taken a very narrow view of financial literacy about just managing money or sort of coping in current systems. And what we're advocating with curriculum authorities is a more critical financial literacy. So yes, we all need to cope within the systems that we have, but it's really important to be teaching a critical view on those systems, as well as teaching kind of a wider toolbox of how we can collaborate with others in communities, with mutual aid or community wealth building, or finding ways of developing the sharing economy together, that all these also have to be part of financial literacy. So you can see at the youngest age, we can talk about how people don't always have everything they need and why that might be, and that helping and sharing makes things fairer. And students have, from the youngest ages, they have this sense of fairness that you can really draw upon. So it's pretty easy, I think, to see how much richer the curriculum would be with this wide lens view, rather than just focusing on buying things or money in the way that it currently stands. Now, I want to just do two more very quick examples, and then we're just going to go into a more open-ended breakout room for another 10 minutes, and then we'll be nearing the end. I want to look at an example of policy. This is, I live in Germany, and right now, one of the big debates that's being had right now is around the laws that govern working time in Germany. Because of demographic pressures and slow growth and global competition and geopolitics, Germany has proposed, or that Friedrich Merz, the chancellor, has proposed that he wants to, and the CDU want to change the working time law to loosen it and give more flexibility to businesses to organize labor as they see fit. In fact, he gave a speech at the Network of Chambers of Commerce where he actually said if he could get rid of one law, that it would be this one. And he got huge applause from the Chambers of Commerce audience. And again, this is a very narrow view of what the economy is, that sees labor as a resource to be used by businesses and markets, but ignores the wider systemic impact of what it would mean to be weakening these laws around working time. So we've got this great new magazine, actually a business and economics magazine that started. These headlines, by the way, have been translated from German, that made the point, along with many other people, it's not just this magazine, but that is making the point about the wider boundary, that time is wealth, and the CDU, this political party, doesn't understand that. And those who demand longer working hours deprive people of rest and the opportunity to participate. So this wider understanding that every hour that you're grabbing from people's time with their families, with communities, is undermining their ability to participate in all of the care work, in the collaboration and community work, in democratic participation, et cetera, that it's undermining the very social foundations on which all of our economy rests. So this is an example of narrow and wide boundary systems thinking as it's playing out in this particular policy debate. Here's another example of it. We've just recently, for the Regenerative Economics book, written a section for young people on profit. Because one of the things that you'll see when profit is discussed, both in economics and in business, is that there is this kind of very positive spin put on it, and a very narrow boundary spin put on profit, that it's all about value creation, that that surplus is a reward for individual and business innovation, risk-taking, finding new ways of more efficiently producing, meeting demand, product market fit, this kind of thing. So there is this sense with this narrow boundary view that profit is the metric we can use that shows the contribution of the business to society. But unfortunately, we know that that's not the only way that profit can be created. Obviously, there is, when you look in your neighborhood, for example, at the local baker or the tailor, there's an enormous amount of value creation happening there. But what we see in particular, the larger companies get and the greater their profit margins involve actually more value extraction. So it's about surplus that's being captured from other areas of the economy, this wide boundary view. Value that's being captured from unpaid household care, from underpaid workers, from nature that is not restored, from public systems, the healthcare, the education, the infrastructure that we collectively produce, and that provides the foundation for economic activity to take place. From monopoly, high pricing power that's basically extracting more value from consumers, from control over essential resources like housing, for example, or water or energy, and this kind of rent-seeking behavior, and state capture, which is has forever been a huge problem, but we can see it on full display right now in the United States. The way that wealth and political power and media power over the media as well intersect and shape profit-enhancing regulations. So much of this is about the use of power to extract value from other people in society or to avoid paying the full cost of the production that's happened. So our understanding of profit as well is defined by this kind of narrow or wide boundary system thinking, and we've just written something for young people to help them understand this. This narrow market view of the economy is basically what it's doing is attending to the short-term profits of business. And where ecological and social issues are addressed, the solutions that are put forward don't fundamentally change the economic system that are often causing the problems in the first place, or they seek to expand market logics even further. Because again, we've got this narrow boundary that kind of prevents us from seeing outside the market frame. And so we're constantly envisioning solutions that keep us within that market frame. With regard to, like, say, price tweaks through taxes or light touch regulation, because we wouldn't want to harm markets too much, right? Because, that's our view of what the economy is. Financializing the problem, like markets for nature, or tech solutions that don't fundamentally touch the design of the economy. But when we have this wide system view, what we're doing is attending to the long-term health of the whole system by trying to stop extractive behavior, by redesigning and redirecting money and finance for regeneration, which is absolutely essential, disrupting reinforcing feedback loops of wealth and power, and distributing power more evenly in society. And when you look at the kinds of policies that come about when you take this wide system view, things like living wages, 4-day weeks, windfall taxes, strict credit guidance, employee and steward ownership, public money and job guarantees for social and ecological work, citizens' assemblies, advertising bans, rapid expansion of public and cooperative housing, free public transport, free and affordable care, on and on and on and on, you will never find these policies discussed in your standard economics course, because when you look at them only through the market lens, and this is your main framing, they look radical, they look extreme, but when you look at them through this wide system boundary, you can see that these policies are attending to the long-term health of the whole system. They are, in fact, a rational and reasonable set of policies, and so new arguments kind of like rise up and come to the fore. So we're going to do just a second breakout room. We're nearing the end of the session, and this one is also relatively short. I think Felix is going to try to put you in the same breakout rooms as you were before, but if you don't have the same breakout room, then we would try to do the same structure with 2 minutes of just a little thinking, some time devoted to introducing yourself if you're with new people, some time for discussion, selecting a reporter, and then 1 minute to agree on a post. So what I've done is I've put this narrow market frame here, and I've put the wide boundary frame for you. And Felix is going to share those two diagrams with you in the chat, so you can open them up and have them to look at. What I'm just curious about is like, what has stood out to you when considering this narrow versus wide boundary framing? It's a totally open question, but I'm wondering what this kind of triggers in you in terms of your thinking about the economy or maybe your own context. So if Felix, if you could send everybody back,
I will
and I'll
send
see
folks
you.
back.
Thank you.
And, and you should be in your same rooms, but people probably have left since then. So if you are in a room by yourself, feel free to join another room, or again use that ask for help option, and I will pop in. All right, thank you all, and have good breakouts.
See you soon.
We used AI as the context to discuss a narrow-minded approach to AI or a broad-minded approach, and how different it can be used. And it was really interesting.
Would you quickly popping that into the chat so I have a
I
record
think
of it?
I delegated Sarah to do
Oh, you
it. I
did.
think she's going to write it. Hopefully she's written it.
Oh, good.
It was really, it sort of made it all, I think it just made it easier to discuss stuff if you have these concepts behind you.
Nice. So just a couple minutes. Oh, I don't see I'm looking for I can't see the chat. Oh, there it is.
Not video, I think I'm on video, am I?
Were you able to find it, Jennifer? Do you need us to read out some things that people are saying?
No, I got it. Yeah, I'm looking at
Fabulous.
it now. Yeah. If you could just pop a few words or phrase or something about what you talked about. I'm just really curious what came up, just for my own thinking about what this stimulates in people.
Can you all hear me?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're working with publishers, academic publishers, a few dozen, to get this into textbooks across the world. And it's a grant-funded project. And it's based on working with 45 academic societies who've been working on this for 20 years. And we also have a whole initiative on helping people from across the political spectrum understand the potentials for a regenerative economy.
Nice.
So I'm going to put my email into the chat. I would very much like to connect with you so that we can not do parallel play and do more coordinated efforts. Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks.
Jennifer, one question was asked. Can you hear me? Is your book?
I can. Yeah. I mean, I was going to move into like some questions and wrap up, but actually we can just go to some questions now because it seems like people would like to have a word. So that's great.
Have you put the economics textbook on? Is there a link to that in this chat or somewhere for people to pick up?
It's in the slides. I'm going to show you a slide that has the link, but I can
Okay.
also just write it into the chat. Actually, Felix, could you do that for me so that I can?
Is it the
can't-
regenerative economics.earth?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
I can't
Perfect. Yeah, I got
recommend
you.
it more
Yeah,
highly.
Dominic,
It's a
you've read
good
the whole
read.
thing, right?
I'm the only man. Not quite. I got to read the profit section.
Nice.
I didn't realize it was for children, for kids, schoolboy. I just read it as a good piece of writing.
Thanks.
You're super. Anyway.
Yeah, that's the right one. Great. Yeah, so look, I was going to wrap up making this point again about the narrow framing versus the wide boundary framing and how so many of the policies that we really need right now are dismissed if we're using standard economic models and forcing all of the analysis through a market lens, a narrow boundary framing. But so much of what we need to be doing, we need to be looking at the wider systemic impact so that we can actually work to regenerate social and ecological systems. And when we look with that wider frame, as I mentioned before, we can see that many of these policies are perfectly rational, perfectly reasonable, and they deserve much more attention in our political systems, and why it's really, really important that we be educating people with this wide systems view so that more people understand where to show up in our lives, in our communities, societies, when they're voting, etc., so that they get the policies that we all deserve. Nice. So what I'd like to do at this time, maybe I can just quickly, let me close the chat here. Yeah, this is just to wrap up really quickly. This is the website where we've put all the materials that we've developed. So the book that we've developed has a Creative Commons license. We've published everything as we've written it. And we've got now 6 topics plus a section on systems thinking and models that's there. Teachers or anybody else can pick it up. They can use it however they wish. And there's a ton of material there. Like I said, there's 2 years worth of teaching material there. And that it's also kind of modular, so you can pick up little pieces. And we've mapped curricula. We're mapping ever more curricula to regenerative economics to help teachers find the footholds in their courses. We have one more topic to go, topic 7 on global exchanges, which I'm working on right now. And then the book will be done, and then we'll just be keeping it up to date because it's a living thing, if you will. And then, right, there is also, actually, maybe I can just take a few questions first. We've got a little bit of time, for questions. So I don't know, I'm not sure how I can see everybody. If you've got a question, maybe you can put your hand up and I'll be happy to give it a go. Katie.
Can you share your office hours link, please?
Yeah, can you?
I got you.
Felix is going to put it in there. Thanks. Yeah, I've got limited office hours for the work on climate, but if you go on the website, you'll see there's also another link with more office hours, or you can send me an email if you'd like to arrange something separately. Katie.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely plan on getting your book, and maybe my question will be answered in there. But just quickly, from your perspective, I'm curious about the concept of ecosystem services from the wider economic lens that you're taking. I've heard about how ecosystem services can be beneficial in definition, but also can then be very harmful when we put an economic value to nature instead of having intrinsic. So just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I mean, my gut reaction is not to like valuing ecosystem services and trying to put a number on it, because I think part of the problem is that when you start looking at let's look at pollination, right? You'll sometimes see pollination expressed in a monetary value. But pollination doesn't exist on its own, right? It's part of a larger embedded system, right? Living system. And so, one of the risks associated with trying to put a monetary value on little bits of nature is that we, again, neglect this wider systems view. And then you end up starting to, try to, enhance or develop this one little bit without recognition of its connection with the whole. I also just fundamentally get in my gut distrust, commodification, marketization of nature. I just don't think that's going to end well. And I think the evidence up to this point hasn't been great. Nonetheless, I don't dismiss it completely out of hands just because I feel like we don't yet know enough about what it could be and how it could work, right? So it's kind of funny, actually. I have not written a section on markets for nature yet because I just don't know how to approach it at this point. So it's one of the things that's sort of sitting there as like, to TBD, to be determined.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that probably wasn't very helpful, but
No, I'd love to hear your thoughts. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Other questions? Happy to take more. We've got a little bit of time, I think.
Would love to collaborate with
Yeah,
you.
can you hear me?
Definitely.
I have 2 people talking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we didn't raise hands. I saw it was quiet.
That's okay.
So thank you so much. It's amazing. been thinking and working along the same lines for basically since we started. So almost everything you're saying is like got to have been out in the world for way before that. It's not known enough. We're looking into doing similar concepts across everything, not just specifically in education and in research or academy. So love to connect with you. I'll definitely set on your time, and we should. I'd love to talk. I can send you a little bit more, and yeah, love to see anything that you're interested to do and impact other areas besides just the education side of things, because like how to impact the industries and all that. And I don't know, the question is basically if you started, if not, we'll talk more later. If you started looking outside education.
Yeah, I could just respond to that really quickly. My superpower is in education because that's where my network is and that's my sphere of influence, right? So I'm just both my kids have left home, I've quit my job and I'm just working on this full time and I'm throwing everything I have into education because that's where I can make a difference. I don't have as much of a sphere of influence outside that. So yeah, I'm using the power that I have in the sphere that it will
Great.
make a difference. So
Great. And I totally appreciate, and everybody should use their powers and their background more than others. But then eventually we need to connect everything together too. So that I'm coming only from one domain, not from education, from another
yeah,
one. But
yeah,
I put my domain in power, but there's so much I can do. We need other experts.
for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess
We have
I was
Alex.
there was a little bit of a discussion that I started it seemed to have started in the chat, and I'm curious to hear it's not a question so much as I'm curious to hear your response. Um, I definitely appreciate the accuracy of the wide view and fully believe it myself, but as a professional communications marketing professional, I find it very challenging to communicate that. It can be very overwhelming. It can be very hard for people to absorb. And so, and kind of part of the discussion was, you can have a conversation one-on-one with somebody and kind of convince them of this, but trying to educate whole populations and change, whole society's ways of thinking is a tall order. Yeah, I'm reminded of the Men in Black quote of, one person is smart, but people are dumb, stupid, panicky animals. Curious your response in relation, like, again, 100% bought into everything that you shared, but now how do we actually convince people of that,
Okay, so my response is I don't know fully the answer to that. What I'm trying to do is change economics education so that we don't keep educating kids around the same degenerative models. And I think we can do that, and we've got time to do that in schools, and it's a good place to do that. I mean, I guess I would just say, if you look at communication from, Zohar Mamdani, for example, his approach in terms of just talking about the things that matter to people in terms of care and transportation and these things, like you're focusing in on the like people's basic needs, their visceral needs, right? And messaging around making people aware that states have the power to provide for these things for people, that we have the power to contain these reinforcing feedback loops of wealth and political influence. It is fully within the scope of society to be able to do this, right? I don't know what the messaging is. I'm not a communications expert in that way, but it strikes me that one of the reasons that he was successful, and Zach Polanski as well, I think is doing a really good job of this in the UK, is around that very simple messaging, and it is resonating with people. But yeah, that's a question for other kinds of communication experts, I think, not so much something that I can attend to. But you're totally right. Completely agree with you.
I think we have one last question from Alex.
Hey. Hi. Yeah, I think at one point you were talking about about power. And often, I did an economics degree a very long time ago when people still talk Keynes. But we also did a lot, there's a reason why people teach politics and economics together, right? So it's not so much the constitutional stuff, but actually how is power used in economics and you highlighted it, but I'm wondering how does that fit into the regenerative?
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering how, there's the potential for it to look a bit soft and flaky. Apologies for my language, but you know where I'm coming from. In the kind of idea of this is all nice, it's about nature. It's actually, a lot of the issues we have is because we've allowed power to be concentrated in the hands of very few, and we have rewarded the people who've had power over economic the ability to kind of control economic markets, basically.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
I'll stop talking and let you answer.
So basically, power does appear in mainstream economics courses, but only in a very narrow segment of the course when we're talking about monopoly and oligopoly power market structures. Otherwise, it doesn't appear at all. But we know that all economic relationships involve power. And in the book that we've written, power is one of the key concepts. So I come from an international baccalaureate background, and we have concept-based curricula. And so it's always really important to identify a few key concepts that are really running right the way through. And power is one of them. It's everywhere in this book. And even things like when we're teaching supply and demand, we don't use linear supply and demand models. We actually use causal loops with feedback. So we're using other kinds of systems diagrams. And one of the things that we talk about is that when demand or supply shifts, that this shifts the power dynamics in the relationships in markets, right? And when demand rises, for example, let's say, I don't know, Taylor Swift comes to town and everybody like wants to go there and gets a hotel room, right? Demand for hotel rooms rises. And in your market, linear demand and supply models, demand rises, prices rise, quantity demanded and supplied rises, right? It all looks like this machine, right? That just happens automatically. But what's happened, and the way we explain it, is that power has shifted in favor of those who control the hotel rooms and resources, and it gives them the power to raise prices if they wish. But this is not a predetermined outcome. That raising prices is always a choice. It's not, something that just happens like a machine. Even when we've got dynamic pricing with algorithms, you've programmed an algorithm to respond in a particular way.
It's not
right?
actually an invisible hand. People are actually making the decisions.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, wherever we can possibly kind of talk about these sorts of power dynamics, we've tried to do it. And in every part of the book, in every topic, we address power and we talk about it in negative in negative terms, because power dynamics are at the root, as you said, of so many of our problems. And so, it's just there. It cuts across everything in a way that you just don't find in a mainstream course. So, have a look. You'll like it.
Well, thank you. Looks amazing. Thank you so much. It's been such an interesting talk.
Okay. So Jennifer, closing statement.
Yeah, no, just thanks so much for all of you coming. If you'd ever like to have a chat about anything to do with education or beyond, just let me know. If you go to the website, that's regenerativeeconomics.earth, you'll also find my contact information there, and you can get in touch or make an appointment or something. Or go to the Work on Climate, where I've put some office hours as well. So
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for this amazing session. It was really very insightful, and I hope everyone over here enjoyed the discussion and Q&A and everything. And so as we are wrapping up, so please take a couple of minutes to complete our survey, which is very important for us. So your answers are important because, they help us understand if we are doing truly advances, like, our mission, whatever we are doing are, correct. And over here, you can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link that Felix has sent in the chat box. And yes, if you'd like to discuss any of this with Jennifer even further, Yeah, you have a chance. You are in luck. She's one of our wonderful experts in the Experts Office Hour program. So you can book some time with her. Felix will share all the necessary links in the chat. Please definitely get in touch, get more insights, and I hope everyone had great session. Best of luck, and we really enjoyed a lot. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and our tech team, our Walk on Climate team, everyone, and yes, Jennifer, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.